Welcome back to Salt of the Earth. My name is Roxy Canales and I am a Christian author. Welcome back also to the second episode of the Lessons from Egypt series. And I'm so excited to share the lesson from today and what the Lord has taught me through this. And hopefully you can benefit as well. So let's get into it. We pick up in Exodus 3, and to give a little context, in the previous chapters of Exodus, the Israelites had promptly been enslaved by the Pharaoh after Joseph's Pharaoh. So the Israelite family had settled in Egypt, started populating, and the Pharaoh kind of got freaked out at the vast number of people and decided to enslave them in Egypt. So we pick up here in Exodus 3 with the Israelites enslaved. We have the Egyptians here ruling over them. And we pick up with this very ordinary looking man. His hands are callous as he holds his staff. And this man's name is Moses. Now, if you know anything about Moses, you know what he did later in life, what the Lord did through him later in his life. But to not give any spoilers right now, you may be wondering, all right, well, Moses is in a desert. How did he end up here in this desert? In the previous chapters, Moses had actually, in a fit of rage, killed an Egyptian slave master and then promptly went on the run because Moses was next on the death list. So Moses flees to this land and he eventually marries, has a family, finds his new family, and becomes a shepherd in this new land. And that is an important, interesting detail, simply because many times we see Jesus depicted as the Good Shepherd. So definitely just a little interesting detail there that I found fun and wanted to touch on. But here in Exodus 3, we do find Moses. And he was once a prince in Egypt. Egypt was the greatest empire in the world in that time. He was one of the most powerful people in the world. And in one single act, he had to flee and he left his family, he left his homeland, Egypt, if you want to call it that, and this Israelite fled. And now we find him wandering in the desert taking care of sheep, which is not a very glamorous job. So we pick up in Exodus 3:1, and I cannot wait to share what happens next. So join me in Exodus 3:1. I'll be reading from the NIV version. Again, you can always follow along with me as well. So in Exodus 3:1, we read, "Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up." Interesting. So Moses thought, "I will go over and see this strange sight. Why the bush does not burn up." I would too. I'd be very interested. I'd also keep my distance, but I would be very interested. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Now, commonly when we read that story and listen to that, we touch on maybe Moses' excuses that happen later in the chapter, or we talk about maybe many times Moses' hesitancies, or we're focused mainly on Moses and his interactions with God, obviously. But here, there's one sentence that really stood out to me that I think has a lot to do with the theme of this series. And it's that here we see that I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. Exodus 3:7. And what I find so interesting here is that we so often just kind of glaze over that, or we may spend 2 minutes on it, and that's fine if it depends on what you're focusing on in the chapter. But here I think it's a point that is so meaningful to us, especially in our generation, and so applicable to, and it shows the character of God and who our Lord is. And says, I've indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. So even though God may seem far away and may seem like he doesn't hear you or listen, this shows that he's watching, and not in like a creepy way, but he's watching. And it's a fatherly love. He's watching the well-being of his children. So I've seen them in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. And you may be in a season right now where you are preparing to leave Egypt of sorts. We talked about that in the last episode. Where you may be preparing to leave Egypt, and it can be an enslaving mindset. It can be an enslaving situation. And you're preparing to leave, and you're wanting to leave, but something is holding you back, and you're anxious, and you're scared, and you're not sure, does God really hear me? Does he really care? Because the care that's described here in this chapter, it is a compassionate love. It's not simply this, oh, hope you're doing well, or just, hey, just checking in, okay, bye. It's not a quick thing. These people have been crying out for years upon years upon years, and God has heard them the entire time. He has heard them every second they've been crying. He's been watching them. He's been caring about them. He wants their well-being. He wants them to thrive. He has been caring for these people and listening, and he's been hearing. And I can guarantee you there were many Israelites in that time, after years of enslavement, where they had said, I've been crying out for so long, and God has done nothing. It seems like he doesn't care. It seems like he's not paying attention. It seems like he doesn't even exist. And if he does exist, then is he really good if he's letting this continue? I can guarantee you there were Israelites that were wondering that and thinking that, and Israelites that turned away because they lost faith in God and his promises. But here we see God comes to Moses, and one of the first things he says is, I've heard their cries and I'm concerned about their suffering. So as you are preparing to leave Egypt, as you feel the Lord working in your life, and as you feel the nudge to move out of that situation, push out of that mindset with the power of God, I want to encourage you that through all of these years, you are not going alone into that situation. I know it may seem like God hasn't heard you. I know it may seem like he doesn't care because you can't see him, and we have a hard time believing what we can't see. So it may be so hard for you to believe that he's actually there and he actually cares and he's actually going to have your back when you take that huge step out of that enslaving situation. And I know it's terrifying and it's so scary, and you may not even know how to live outside of that situation because you've never been in a safe situation. You've never been in a stable situation. You've never been free. And freedom is terrifying. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's a gift. And it's also terrifying if you've never lived in it before. And that may be you right now when you're preparing to fight the battle of anxiety or fight the battle with a scenario or relationship that isn't healthy, and you may be preparing to leave that, and you're excited. A part of you is so excited to be free finally and to live the life that you didn't get to live, but also a part of you is terrified because if you step out, what if no one's there to catch you? But we see here again that God tells the Israelites, these people that have been brutally enslaved and treated horribly for years, the Lord tells Moses, I've heard every cry. I know of every tear. I know of every heartache, and I concern myself with it. I'm concerned about your suffering. I know. Tell them I know what's been going on. I've seen every injustice. I've seen every mistreatment, and I know the pain you feel, and I know it hurts. But I've been there and I've heard. Tell them I've heard your cries. I've heard their cries, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So now, even in this moment, as perhaps you are struggling, as you're preparing to leave a mindset or a bad relationship, or you name it, that has been keeping you bound, that's been keeping you enslaved, then please remember that you're not going out alone. Even if it feels terrifying, even if you wonder who's going to catch you, even if you're wondering if God actually cares, please, He does. You see all over Scripture, countless times where people, the Israelites, get enslaved, and then God hears their cries and He rescues them. He rescues them every time. He doesn't fail. He keeps His promises, and He's heard their cries. He's heard every moment, every heartache. He knows you and He cares about you. He knows your name and He loves you so, so, so much. So thank you for listening today. I pray that this video has encouraged you if you're preparing to leave a situation or a mindset or fight a battle that seems so overwhelming and you need backup. And I pray that you will allow the Lord to not only be your rear guard, but also your front runner as you go into that battle, because He's capable and He loves you and He definitely fights better than you ever could. So thank you for listening today. And as always, stay salty.